Hello, and welcome to Reanimated, episode 163. And we're
Yay!
deep into The Walking Dead season 7. Really not that deep, we're just on episodes 3 and 4. But it's me, Stuart, one of your hosts. The other one, HA. Where you at?
I'm here.
There she is. HA's over there, I'm over here. You know the drill. We're going to be doing episode 3 and 4, which are the Cell and Service. And we got a couple of news items too to dig into before we get there. So let's take a look at those. HA, I assume that you're not super jazzed about the release date of State of Decay 2.
I think that's more your in your wheelhouse, my friend.
Well, I'm super jazzed. Even though from where I'm sitting, and I haven't done a whole lot of research into the game, I don't know that they're releasing a vastly different game other than introducing co-op support, and so it'll be on like a new map. But that was a cool game. As you might recall, longtime listeners of the podcast, I did not totally dig State of Decay because it had hero type zombies, like the big ones and the fast ones, which is to me usually like I don't know, it cheapens the experience. It removes some of the suspension. And also just kills your guys really easy because those zombies are really hard to kill. And it's a hard game anyway because I feel like that game you really learned about attrition of your peeps, because you could jump like the character you were controlling around among a group of all the survivors that you had essentially. I don't know. It was a cool game. I think it was a little rough around the edges, but it was. Now they have a lot more money thanks to the success of the initial one, and they have the support of Microsoft, which is no slouch. So, what's that date anyway that they're coming out? May 22nd.
Not too long.
Not too far away. So get ready to play. It'll be on Xbox One and PC.
What's your setup?
I have both. I think I'm going to get it on Xbox just because I very rarely play any games on my Xbox. So it's like every so often when I see a game that I'm like, I might play that on Xbox, I'm like, well, I have to now. I'm still trying to justify buying it, even though I watch TV through it every day. Like that is our home entertainment center, is the Xbox. We watch Netflix through that and everything. So,
well, at least it's gained some use.
Honestly, it's central. It's central to my entertainment, but it's I just haven't found a lot of games that I've wanted to play on it. So May 22nd, that'll all change.
So we'll wait for your review on that one when you get it.
Yeah, you'll have to give me a minute, but I think it's going to be fun. It's co-op, so I can join all of my other friends on Xbox Live.
Cool. Do you have any other friends on Xbox Live?
Do I? Yeah, I have a handful, but I very rarely play co-op games on. Maybe I should get it on PC for that very reason. Anyway, next up was something I saw on Instagram, Fear the Walking Dead Instagram's feed. Did you watch this little clip, and what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it looks exciting. I'm actually excited to see the season premiere of Fear the Walking Dead. And that actually something I saw this whole weird little article about the season finale of The Walking Dead, and the season premiere of Fear the Walking Dead is apparently coming to a limited number of theaters, which will be live streaming it, I guess, on the day of premiere and finale, which is April 15th, just before tax day, but it's interesting because when I tried to find it in New York, which I'm assuming there's got to be a few theaters it's going to happen, and I could not find it yet, so maybe they aren't quite up and running, and trying to figure out exactly where it's going to be. But my guess is that they're going to have agreements with the theaters to be able to do this. I don't know. Part of me is a little, especially in New York, it might be a little weird to go to that kind of thing here because people get really, really pumped up about it. And in some ways that can be fun, but in some ways that can also be a little like scary, because one of the disclaimers is that people aren't allowed to bring real weapons to the theater.
That's not okay.
It's definitely not okay, but how are they going to actually check everybody, I guess, is my concern. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a little bit too cautious.
So the Instagram video though that I was mentioning was the one with the SWAT truck. Yeah, so they show a SWAT truck, which is a big deal, and a new character, Althea. Two things that we have not seen before on Fear the Walking Dead or The Walking Dead. They've never used an armored car. They used like a ice cream van before, I guess, when they rigged it to release zombies into the prison. But they haven't. I mean, the concept of an armored car, armored truck, or something, or bus even, is almost a trope in zombie stuff, right? Like they did it in Dawn of the Dead 2004. I'm trying to think of other examples where I mean, one of those Romero movies where the zombies were smart and they lived in the city. I forget what that one was called. Land of the Dead, I think.
Yep.
They definitely had the armored truck.
Girl with All the Gifts. They have the armored med van and everything.
Yeah,
so.
the labs. So I mean, this one doesn't even look like they had to do many modifications. It was just a SWAT bus. So it'll be cool to see how they employ it. And I hope that they eventually address the issue of gasoline in this entire franchise, because it doesn't stay good forever. Gasoline does expire.
True. That is true. But the other thing and this is part of why they're doing this weird live event thing for the finale, whatever, is the crossover with Morgan. And he is front and center in these advertisements. So I'm curious to see how they segue him in. Because I'm guessing he must appear in the premiere of Fear the Walking Dead, right?
I feel like his story is kind of all over the place right now, and we've got a while to go before we get to where he's going to depart one and join the other.
Well, not that long. So anyway, we're looking forward to all sorts of good news on this end of things. And I wonder if in addition to the SWAT truck, I mean, we see a new character. Maybe there's more that we cannot see yet. Maybe it's not just this lone person driving it around, right?
Yeah, I mean, that clip certainly makes it look like she's a lone person driving a truck around.
It does, but there, I feel like there's got to be a little bit more,
yes.
So we'll see.
Yes, I think there's going to be, I mean, we already, there was another picture from that Instagram feed of Garrett Dillahunt, the dude I was very excited about to be coming on the show, wearing a cowboy outfit, basically, all dressed in black.
Like Johnny Cash.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yes.
It was cool. That makes me think he's going to be a villain, which, just because tropes. But I'm psyched. He's a great villain if he does end up being one. So hopefully they don't waste his talents. I'm kind of excited for Fear the Walking Dead. I'm surprised at myself.
Yeah, me too. But there it is. So we will get to see that, and I'm sure we will review it at some point. Next up, you found a little bit of a science thing. Speaking of Girl with All the Gifts, the fungi that takes over the ants. Scientists have found out that basically an ant who's infected with this wonderful little zombie contagion, whatever you would call it, parasite, I suppose. Basically, they'll walk into the colonies, and the ants don't recognize it as being a threat to the colony. So the infected ant can kind of walk around, do its own thing, still eat, still live, until it basically leaves to become this host of the fungi and repeat the cycle. So I think that's a little terrifying personally, because some of the things that we have seen in the past is that when an animal or an ant, especially in these colonies, is infected with something, the ants basically get rid of it. They don't really tolerate the presence. They just view it as a threat, and they sort of banish the ant from the colony. So for whatever reason, this fungi is not getting past that safety net, and that is why it's able to propagate. So kind of creepy.
Yeah, and to me, it kind of undermines some of the potential for the Girl with All the Gifts scenario, where it jumps species, because in that story, once they get infected, they become biters, right, or hungries or whatever. And there's nothing like that in this disease. Obviously, it's just they get infected, they hang out at the base for a while, and then they go out and die. And then really the only offensive maneuver action that happens as a result of the fungus is that they eventually spread spores on the forest floor. So they're not even really doing it inside the ant
they're not
house.
Actively infecting the other ants within the colony.
Yeah, so
just happens later, passively in some ways.
It would still be terrifying for this to jump species and for humans to start growing fungal like rods out of their heads or whatever, however it would go. But still, it's I don't know. To me, I was like, oh, okay, that's nice. They don't go around biting each other and then turning into a giant, wall in London. So I took this away as being good news.
I don't know about that, because it just shows a lack of the safety mechanism, and so that's, I don't know. I guess it remains to be seen, but let's hope it just remains in the status quo and stays friendly like this. No biters.
We don't need no biters.
And lastly, there is a trailer for the Santa Clarita Diet Season 2. And I know that you were not a fan of this. I was, so I actually thoroughly enjoyed this trailer. I also especially enjoyed the little millisecond of Nathan Fillion's head in it.
Yep.
So that made me very happy. And I think this is well done. I know you thought it was over the top, but I will definitely be watching.
Give it another try. I was tempted when I saw this trailer to finish watching the first season. But I also felt like I was seeing too many of the same
things that
issues that bothered me. So yeah, it'll be tough, but I might see it. I don't know.
I especially like the nerdy kid that knows all about the zombies. I'm glad to see that they kept him in the show, and I do like the chemistry between Drew Barrymore and the rest of the cast. Billy Bob Thornton. They have a good chemistry, and so I am going to thoroughly enjoy it, whether you do or not, Mr. Tiffin.
Billy Bob Thornton is in this?
Isn't that him?
Wait, where?
Isn't he your husband?
No, that's Timothy Olyphant.
Oh gosh. there we go. This is my St. Patrick's Day thing catching up with me. Mr. Olyphantastic. Sorry about that. I guess I was just hoping for I have also been watching Fargo, so which I had never seen, and
I still haven't seen it.
Really?
Yeah.
I think you could enjoy it. It's and that is definitely Billy Bob Thornton in that.
You sure?
So maybe not.
Rare psychological disease HA has where she sees Billy Bob Thornton and many other people.
If you look at the two of them, they do look shockingly.
No, they do not. Come on. Okay.
I'm just messing around. No, but Fargo, he is evil, Billy Bob Thornton, but amazing. I definitely recommend at least the first season of the television series.
Okay. It's on my list. I'll get there.
Good. However, but anyway, getting into it. So today we are going to be reviewing episodes 3 and 4 of season 7 of The Walking Dead. Now, I have a few thoughts about The Cell.
The Cell. Gosh.
Which is the third episode, and it's a very Daryl focused sanctuary episode. And we see a lot about the backstory. I mean, mainly we're seeing a lot of the story of what happened to Dwight when he went back with his wife to the sanctuary. And it gives you a little bit more context about why he's behaving the way he is, which I think you could all kind of guess. But there's a lot more going on here that gives us more of the dynamics of how the sanctuary works, how Negan inspires loyalty or fear, as it were. And I still have a lot of questions, and there's a lot of skepticism I have in terms of how this particular system would work. But let's jump into it.
So this starts off with, really it's a montage of Dwight, yeah. And I think it's probably the best thing, maybe about this whole season, is this montage of Dwight and showing what life is like at the Savior's, what do they call this place? The Sanctuary.
Sanctuary.
Oh man, it's just so good. And you have the first time you hear this song, also, you don't understand the context of it until later on in the episode. by the time you figure out what the song is about, then you're like, oh my god, poor Daryl.
Poor Daryl. Yeah.
But Dwight is like the making of the sandwich specifically. I mean, I guess that's kind of the end of the montage. Is such I love it. Like this is
Yep.
great editing. It's to this upbeat music, and you're watching people go through like getting killed. I do if I have one criticism of the way that they showed the sanctuary during this episode, it's that by season 8, when you're back in the sanctuary, you don't really see it being this bad anymore. Part of it, part of this montage makes me wonder how the hell the society works at all, and that is
Right.
underlined when Dwight goes to get his old friend who has run away, and he's like, "I'd rather die than go back." So
Right.
this is underscoring the fact that life is miserable there. And then
Right.
some stuff happens in season 8, the beginning of season 8, I guess, because we're still in season 8 on TV, where you're like, well, okay, why isn't there just a full on rebellion going on at this point?
Right. And it even what we see within this episode makes me wonder why a rebellion hasn't happened long before. It's not I mean even the existence that the denizens of the sanctuary are able to scrape together, and even those are that are in not necessarily in the sanctuary proper, but those that are in groups that are basically having to pay tribute to Negan. I mean, they have it a little bit better because they're not there on a daily basis. But those that are the sort of powerhouse of the sanctuary, those that are the core. I don't really see that this would be sustainable without people doing exactly what Dwight's former friend does, which is to get out of there and basically commit suicide by cop or the equivalent. Um, it is not, it is a very bleak place. You're not, unless you are one of Negan's favored people, you're not really getting a good living place. You're getting beaten and tortured all the time. You're not getting food. This is just not something where people will be able to continue to work, because fear only gets you so far. At some point you're going to get exhausted. I don't mean to draw like the only thing that I could think that would be somewhat akin to this is like concentration camps. And that was even, people did die, and they died of starvation, and they had some hope of getting out, and in this scenario they kind of don't. So, or they had some hope that people would come and help them out. Maybe they did or maybe they didn't, but I think you would give up hope after a while in this particular world. There's nothing that really is there to give people that little bit to cling to. But and I definitely think that, especially with Dwight, who went back there with his wife, the whole reason why he and his wife left was because her sister had medical issues. She was then kind of backed into a corner to marry Negan or be one of his many wives. And that's why they left. So they got up enough courage to leave. I don't see them going back to this. There's just nothing here that I could really point to that they kind of knew what they were coming back to, and they went back willingly. And I just don't think that I think that fear would have driven them in the other direction to get as far from that as possible. And at that point, they had stolen, enough things to be able to try to make their way. They could have gotten out of the area that Negan's people were, and they chose to go back, knowing what the consequences would be, or at least knowing that the consequences would not be good.
Yeah. Well, Sherry does say that she regrets. She's like, she says it through the door to Daryl at one point, where she's like, "Yeah, you told me that I would be sorry, and I just want you to know that I am."
Yeah.
I think that she regrets the way that this has gone. Any scene where the two of them are together is pretty edgy, like especially once we realize what the situation is after, because Negan actually just explains the whole thing
Yeah.
to freaking Daryl, which is a funny scene, not good funny. But yeah, so Dwight is basically getting reminded constantly that he is not with his wife anymore, and that his wife is with Negan, and that she's taking pregnancy tests, and la la la, and it's kind of incredible that a guy ostensibly as strong as Dwight, because he's also an enforcer, is taking this sort of psychological and emotional punishment, and you assume this is happening every day or constantly from Negan, that
Right.
he's reminding him of this situation.
And Dwight has many opportunities to actually escape and Negan trusts him so much because he knows that he's so broken. And some of that is that he has his wife. So he knows that if he leaves, something bad will probably happen to her. Or at least that's the assumed threat. So, but even so, this is not any kind of an existence. And Daryl agrees. I mean, they're basically using all the different types of torture and dehumanizing that they can with him. I mean, the whole, he's in a cell naked, and then after a while they give him clothes, and after a while they're giving him like food, but it's really bad food, and constantly trying to break him down. And it's classic. It's the classic methods that they're using here, in order to make him eventually give in to Negan. And the big thing is that they want him to be part of Negan's hit squad. And like, no matter how far down you can break somebody, I just don't think that all of these people would be, unless he has something on every single one of them, which he may, but I just don't think that one person in Negan's position doing the things that he is doing would be able to sustain this, and certainly not with hundreds of people.
Yeah, that continues to be a kind of mind-boggling, that he could control this many people through fear.
I mean, when I'm bringing up other sort of scenarios, I mean, with during World War II, that was an entire regime of people that were helping to propagate this. But Negan seems to be, he's like the main person propagating it. And there's definitely people that have doubts about it, and people like that question it and know that it's terrible. But yet continue to do it. So I don't, there's something about it that I don't find plausible. But then again, we are in the world of The Walking Dead, and they're trying to show the different things that could happen. And it's interesting because it's like, then you have, the hilltop people who have like more of a feudal knight system going on, which wasn't necessarily the best thing either, when it was actually happening in history. So it's kind of interesting that they are trying to show these different ways of society, how it might roll out. And I think that that's probably the purpose, but some of it's just over the top on both sides. That I wish sometimes that the writers would get a little bit more realistic about it. A little bit less, mustache twirly with Negan, right?
Mm-hmm, right. So Daryl is given many opportunities to turn, to become to say that he's Negan, refuses every time. And they try to underscore to him that either he does it or he ends up as a zombie in the zombie wall. As we get to see two other people from the sanctuary end up in the zombie wall during this episode, so you know that it's happening a fair amount. Like, there's the redheaded guy in the very beginning, who's got a wife and son, but apparently just can't handle the pressure of being a worker in that society, and flips out, and then he ends up being killed and turned into a defense measure. And then his other buddy, who, this is, if you think about how he does this, it's a little, because Dwight gets really messed up because zombies, he has some interactions with zombies. His motorcycle gets broken, and he's walking back with a really bad limp, and he's holding his side as he's escorting this guy back. And then the guy's like, just kill me, I'm not going back. And then they're like, no. Eventually he does just shoot the guy, but then he has to wait for him to reanimate.
Yeah, and then has to wrangle him back.
And walk all the way back to the sanctuary. So it was just like a couple days that he's waiting, because we know that it happens, sometimes like 8 hours or 12 hours later. It was, they don't show you any of that. They just show suddenly the guy is back and he's in the wall, and Dwight's looking at him with kind of an unreadable expression. But I thought that was a little bit odd.
Yeah, agreed.
I think this was an excellent episode for to just give you a glimpse inside the sanctuary. Anytime we're in the sanctuary, and it happens more and more as you go along,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, it opens your eyes. It makes you do these comparisons between Rick's group and this other group, and it makes it less black and white. Sometimes it makes more questions than answers, but I think that these are extremely useful glimpses. But then any kind of newfound respect or empathy we have for Dwight basically gets wiped out again in the next episode. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
So Service, episode 4, is a David Boyd, Corey Reed writer director team up. 11 million rather viewers, and we end up back at Alexandria. And I think this episode is most famous for Negan making Rick carry the baseball bat around all day as they do a massive their first installment of I don't know, tithing against Alexandria.
Right. And I mean, there is a lot of things that we learn about in this episode. One is that Negan came early, like he deliberately came early, and so cannot keep his word, which we already knew. Which is interesting since he prides himself on keeping his word about other things, and that's how he shows his power and shows that he will follow through on things. This is also a way for Negan and his men to break this community and make sure that they're never going to rise up again. And so they take things that are precious to them. They make a point of threatening Olivia, who had been in charge of the arsenal. And, basically forces Rick into a position where he has to cave or they're probably going to kill her. And I mean, I gotta say, like, I think in addition to her, they'd probably kill other people too. So Rick has to even go to the lengths of taking stuff from Michonne as a show. He is in full on, I am complying with whatever they're saying here. The one small piece that we know from later on that Maggie certainly does not die, but they fake Maggie's death because they're asking about her. And I think Negan definitely would have taken her. So, that was a piece where they basically Father Gabriel fakes her death and says that he's by her grave. And so they're not fully complying on that level, but at least in front of Negan they are. And then in the conversations that Rick has with other people, specifically with Michonne, Rick explains why he's doing what he's doing, and he's basically in full-on survival mode. And other people, Rosita, Michonne, clearly have not given up. And it's a tough episode to watch if you really like Rick, because he's rough in this, and it's absolutely hopeless, or it feels as such.
And like I said, with Dwight, he has some interactions that he's just 100% an asshole, and he's like pouring out water from Rosita's canteen.
Yep.
He's like mocking a Spanish or a Latin, accent when he's talking to her. Mm-hmm. He's being super dick, and so I said, any of that empathy that we had is just wiped out.
Well, he shows he's equal to Negan in how he is showing his control over people. So all the stuff with Rosita is basically him being Negan Jr. It's stuff you would expect to see from Negan. This is the first point. I mean, we saw a little bit of humanity in him, just a little bit in the last episode. And here we can see full on how he has completely, he supports whatever Negan's doing, or at least has learned to. And the stuff with Rosita is absolutely, basically, I'm going to keep you on a short leash and you have to do what I say. Even to the point, and it's also related to Daryl too, because it's about getting Daryl's bike. And that's actually, that was really heartbreaking in a way that I didn't anticipate when I first watched it. And then you're like, oh God, no, because the bike he does really care about. And the fact that it was given up to them is truly terrible.
It's so weird, the whole Dwight Daryl thing where he's got his vest on, he's got his crossbow, and all he wants is his motorcycle. And it's like, all right, man. It's just curious to have one character create make himself the nemesis of another.
In that way.
Yeah, it's so over the top and obvious, but it's also just like, okay, why, dude? However, so Carl also shows a little backbone in this episode.
A little too much, if in a weird, strange decision-making way. Yes.
Only building though the bromance between Negan and Carl and anytime somebody shows backbone, it seems like Negan usually takes a shine to them, but not every time. And another character who's notable in this episode is Spencer, mostly because he's still just a douche.
Yeah, Spencer. I mean, did we really expect him to be anything but a douche? No.
When has he done anything cool?
Never.
So all he's doing is like grumbling and moaning and bitching to Rosita that Rick, it's all Rick's fault.
Even though he almost caused Olivia's death, which was great.
He didn't really. So he was hiding stuff. He's been hiding stuff since season 6, right?
Yeah, I know. But he didn't seem to be all that like chuffed by the fact that she might die and that he was mad that Rick went into his space. It's like
chuffed mean happy. I was proper chuffed.
I guess. I don't know. I'm all over the place today. Yeah, Billy Bob Thornton. Timothy Olyphant. But in any case, he was more upset about Rick going into his space than he was about the idea that Rick was like,
went into my house. I'm like, dude, your house was full of saviors. They took all your mattresses. Like, there's nothing. Okay.
I admit that when Rick was like, yeah, they took most of the mattresses, I kind of started laughing. I'm like, why I know they took the mattresses, but it was just sort of an odd thing for them to do. I don't know.
Imagine like every mattress in the area, these were all like beautiful, clean mattresses. And now they gotta, if they even find new ones, they might have like zombie goop on them.
Yeah.
It's currency. Anyway, it's currency in this world.
Mattresses. Go into the mattresses. And also heartbreaking in this is that they have to actually see Daryl because they're making Daryl kind of help out with this wonderful endeavor. And that sucks because all the group, at least they see he's alive, but part of why they're being allowed to see that he's alive is to basically have that over their heads. So
yeah.
Anyway.
And then Negan, I think this might be a fatal flaw of Negan, is that after all day he's having Rick carry Lucille around and, he's doing all of his jibber jabber. And at the end of the day, he takes Lucille back and then says that thing about, just in case you aren't keeping track, I just put my dick down your throat and you thanked me for it. Like when he does that, yeah, sure, he's definitely, I feel like he's overstepping. Like he does that with Dwight too. And it's stuff like that though that makes people be like, no, I will not stand for this. I will fight you. So I don't know if that's like on purpose by the writers saying like that he just can't help himself, even though he's all about like workers and harnessing the power of the people. But at the same time, he's destroying any of the control that he has over these people by relishing that control too much.
Well, not just relishing, but making sure that they know it and know it in a truly destructive and strange way. And these are the parts and these are the scenes where he has to make it entirely clear there's no question about how he is exercising that control over them, that I just don't believe that his sanctuary would have sustained. Definitely not up until the point where he could have taken over Rick's group. Because you treat people in that way, that is exactly what would make them rise up. And you can't do it to everybody. I mean, you can't have control over people's minds. And no matter how broken they are, people are only going to deal with that for so long. And whether it's to come back and basically challenge him, which takes a lot of backbone, or whether it's to just get away, I just think that there's just no way you could have a united front enough to be able to keep your communities going. So that was what really bothered me, because it wasn't just this one instance. He does this in several instances, both in the episode 3 with Daryl and Dwight, and episode 4. And it's so over the top in a way that I feel was overplaying the hand with this character. And he is crazy in the comic books. I mean, in the graphic novels, there's no doubt that he is a totally insane character, and they are playing to that character. But I feel like that is something that in a show, you don't need to be completely subtle, but you need to show him being aware enough to give people hope. It's not enough to just give them a clean place to live in and food and stuff like that. But, you know, if you took somebody's wife from them, having the guy seeing whether she's having pregnancy tests or not, or things like that, that's just a bridge too far.
Yeah. So we might see that come back to bite him, but or not, because, well, yeah, we haven't gotten ourselves rid of Negan yet on this show, even like through the current timeline. Spoiler alert. But good God, he's great, but he's also got some pretty big flaws, and I don't know how intentional all of them are. I want to think that all of them are intentional, but they seem pretty big. However, I guess that's kind of it for the Cell and Service. Do you have anything else to add, HA?
No, not for this. But I agree. I think the Cell was it was my favorite episode out of this season. So, and it's not to say that this season, just because of, I feel like the way that we get to see the workings of the Sanctuary are vital to understanding Negan and the way that everybody's working. And I just liked I just feel like overall the artistry of that episode with the editing, the music, and the storytelling was probably the best that they did. So hats off for episode 3.
100% agree. And that episode was written by Angela Kang, who's a regular writer on the show, and directed by Ulrich Riley, who I don't know if I've seen their name very much.
I don't think so, but well done, Ulrich.
Yeah.
and Angela, so... All right. Well, next time we're going to dive into the next 2, and soon we will be contemporary. I'm excited about that. If you would like to give us some comments about episodes 3 and 4, send us an email at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or leave a note on our site, reanimatedpodcast.com.
Thank you so much for listening.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.